Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast with David Hirschfeld with us. Today's founder and CEO at Tekyz Corp. It's a software startup accelerator. He's an AI expert, a workflow automation expert, a board member, an advisor, and as of late started this new podcast that's called Scaling Smarter in Vista, California. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. And yeah, David, we're glad to have you on. Tell us a bit more about yourself, what you've been up to as of late.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Charles. Yeah, so as of late, I've been working with software companies for, well, my own software company originally 25 years ago, which I successfully exited, and then with founders in the last 18 years since I founded Tekyz. Lately, everything is about AI, workflow automation, and but the big thing for me has been finding a path for founders to get to revenue quickly as a way of proving product market fit before they make the big investment to develop their software. Because what I've seen is founders basically spending a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of their personal sweat equity only to build the wrong thing for the wrong customer and not realize that until that investment has been spent. And so my goal with Launch First was to find a different path that wasn't the classic MVP, raise money from investors and hope that you find a path to revenue.
Very interesting. So, how do you split your time nowadays with the pod, with the company, and everything else that you're doing? What does a day in your life look like?
That's a really interesting question. Uh, because right now I'm building a new office at my property. And so a lot of my day has been spent in construction related issues and finishing that. I move in next week. So when you ask me what I do right now to split my time, an unfortunate amount of that has been on that. But my focus is and where my heart is finding ways of building workflow automation that ties AI into everyday tasks. Whether those everyday tasks are reconciling invoices to orders to drop shippers, or whether that everyday task has to do with creating a very customized outreach program to specific ideal customers, and and having very authentic responses to them, or whether it's building an AI model to make project management a much more personal, engaging process. These are all the kinds of things that we're doing on a daily basis.
Right. And who do you target at Techies? What's your ICP? What industry, company size? Tell me a bit more about that.
I've got a couple of those. So one of them is startup founders who have some enough funding to do their MVPs, but don't have a really quality tech team that they can rely on. These would be non-technical founders. Typically, others would be non-technical founders who have engaged a technical team for some period of time and are just really unhappy with how long it's taking, with the quality of what the code that's being produced, things like that. I call those recovery projects. They're some of my favorite, and some of my largest customers ended up becoming those. Um, and the third one are ICP would be existing companies that are struggling to figure out how to implement AI into their workflows, or that have still a lot of manual processes and are trying to figure out what is appropriate to automate and how to prioritize and implement those automations.
Right. And how do you reach out to these folks? How do you get new clients?
Well, as I mentioned, we're building some automated workflows right now to do that. I've built up also a referral network of partners who refer projects to us, and we have a pretty lucrative referral program. Uh, uh, some of that is doing through these podcast interviews. I've found lots of potential referral partners, which have turned into projects. So, and and we are building a referral partner portal to manage those partners, which will be a product that will launch later this year as a SaaS product. So
Tell me
these are all
about
the
that
things that we've been doing. Yeah,
automated workflow. Is it outbound? Is it email? Is it AI? Like, tell me about that automated
it's
workflow you're
it's
building.
outbound. It's LinkedIn. It's outbound to email. It's it's AI um, s- and specified workflows. So we use a tool called N8N for building these workflows, and then we integrate those into and we reach out with AI with the large language models and different ones depending on what we're doing for different steps in the process. So, and what we're doing is building several different discrete workflows and then having those workflows call each other to expand. One of the workflows is the research workflow to identify the list of potential targets. One of the workflows is the LinkedIn outreach. One of the workflows is the email campaigns. One of those workflows is the drip campaign, where it's creating the messages as custom messages for each um, of those steps in the workflow or in a drip campaign. Um, uh, so these are kind of how we're architecting and structuring this. Because I found lead gen companies are really not very good at um, finding truly qualified potential prospects and bringing them to the table. And so we decided to just build this on our own. There's enough capability out there with AI, and we're good enough developers to be able to build this a really effective workflow to do this. And then we can tweak and refine this workflow and maybe end up eventually turning it into a product that we license to other people. But initially, we're just
Right.
building it for ourselves.
Nice. And is it fully agentic, like plug and play? You just tell it to outreach to some specific audience, and it does it for you. Like, is it a fully agentic system or
That
more
is
old
the
school
idea.
automated?
No, the idea is that it actually does the research for us too, to pick and then produces the lists. Yeah, or you can upload the list to it. Yes, it's fully agentic.
And what about like the production side of things? You know, we've seen all these vibe coding tools nowadays. Do you almost fully automate that part? And how close are we to having a fully agentic coder that can fully code the working solution from the get-go?
Well, how close in terms of time? Probably getting closer, much closer, maybe in a year. Where How close are we in terms of what it can do today? Still, there's huge gaps in that process. Um, you can build applications using AI. Those applications are limited in many different ways, and the level of sophistication you can build without getting involved in a very technical level is limited. If you want to build simple applications, AI can build those for you pretty competently now, but they have to be relatively simple. But more sophisticated things with uh, more sophisticated user experiences, AI is just not there. Problem is AI doesn't have a good memory, and so uh, when the when the when it gets to be sophisticated, it forgets about whole portions of the application that it's working with, and then starts to write things that make no sense or screw up things that were working and now don't work. And we spend a lot of our energy on this problem because we want to automate as much of the development process as possible, and we've been able to automate an awful lot of it. It just can't automate all of it for anything really sophisticated yet. It's a
Right.
little ways
And do
off,
you
I think.
plan hiring more software developers yourself, or just keep on with the current team right now and keep on strengthening each member so that they can 10x their code output?
That is the goal, is the 10x concept, to just keep improving what we can do with our existing team, and providing a much higher level of value to clients without having to increase our development staff. When we find some really good people, then we will reach out and hire them if they're available. But the goal is not to build a bigger team. The goal is to build a more sophisticated system so that every team member can be much more productive.
Right. You recently started a podcast. What's your thesis with that podcast? What do you want to achieve?
Um, with scaling smarter is to it's a couple things. One is to just to grow my branding uh, in terms of our level of competency and the kinds of companies that we work with. One of them is to identify um, uh, is to give a voice to people that have stories in terms of what they've done to scale their companies using AI and workflow automation. And some of those will end up becoming good referral partners or possibly even customers, right? That I reach out to. But it's really to grow an audience because that audience helps brand Tekyz and brand my team and brand the kinds of things that we're doing.
You feel that podcast will scale in the next coming years if like there would be an AI Charles talking to AI David right now, we could both do some stuff in the background. I mean, there is the human relationship component to it, but ultimately if we want to create content at scale, that AI avatar concept makes a lot of sense, right? Like, do you feel the podcast idea will scale in the next coming years?
Well, it has to get a lot better than it is now. If that avatar, because you can tell when it's an avatar still, right? Even really good avatars are not 100% lifelike. Um, they don't behave naturally. Their mouths don't move naturally. It doesn't feel like you're hearing two people truly talking. The voice part works pretty well, like with Google, which Google proved that, many months back with Google Notebook LM, but the video part does not. So, and the voice part doesn't do it completely either because you end up getting such consistent, common kinds of profiles. It's always the same two people talking to each other. Uh, I don't know if that's, but you can use those voice avatars for doing like phone outreach or having, to potential clients, that sort of thing. That is incredibly effective. In fact, one of my biggest clients is a nurse AI that can do triage and have conversations with people on Medicaid and things like that. And that's uh, uh, my one of my biggest clients, and they're having huge success. So that kind of stuff is very effective in very point solution type of circumstance. But to like grow a big audience, yeah, maybe it'll get there at some point. It'll get there, but it's not there yet. And then when it does get there, then the world will get drowned by the volume, right, of these episodes that are being created with all these avatars. So that will be the problem. Just like automated outreach on LinkedIn used to be very effective, having prescribed workflows, but now that's totally ineffective, right? So, when the volume is there, then the effectiveness just disappears. And so then you have to be more discreet in how you approach each thing as everything evolves.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking to launch an outbound campaign to actually interview business owners with my AI on the fly, like literally cold call them and be like, hey, this is Charles AI here. I'd like to do a podcast with you live on this phone call. I think that can be successful to some degree. I think the quality would sort of fall, but I'm eager to test that. So I'll keep you updated on that experiment. Talking about the experiment,
Yeah, I'm very curious how that goes too. Yeah.
yeah, tell me about your Cluj experiment. You tried to build another social media platform. So tell me a bit more about what happened there.
Oh, that was a big learning curve for me. So that was probably 10 years ago when we started that. And we built, and we have 5 patents. I have 5 patents now as a result of that. This was related with another company I'm partnered with, which is in the healthcare space. But we use some of the intellectual property that we created from that healthcare company in terms of video clipping with the idea that we were doing um, um, video and content clipping in the healthcare space to be able to create customized folders for healthcare professionals, right? Of the content that matters to them. That's where it started. We created and we filed our first patent for that in 2013 to give you an idea of timeframes. Then we took that concept, and I thought, this is right at when Instagram was new. I thought we would create a media clipping, because one of the things that I find is you get all these long form videos and you find content on websites all over the place, right? And it's very difficult to then somehow capture that content in a way that you can reference it again, and organize the stuff that you're capturing so that things related to, like, one of my hobbies is woodworking. Let's say I want to make a woodwork. I want to keep everything related to woodworking jigs that I find. I want to quickly just bookmark that point in a video because this is something important to me, and then tag it in such a way that I can easily find it again, and everything else related to woodworking jigs. But I can find that little clip inside the video that might be playing on YouTube or on Facebook or someplace else. I can find it, I can play it again and reference it immediately, share it with somebody else. This was the idea. And we created a pretty cool product called Kludge, because the idea is you're kludging all these different pieces of content together. And it worked really well. The problem was we didn't have the right messaging in terms of getting people to understand the difference between what Kludge was doing and something like Instagram, which they're wildly different. But it wasn't obvious because the end result looks like another Instagram video. But this is before TikTok, right? Or another TikTok video today. They weren't the same thing. And it wasn't just videos. It was also images and sections of a web page that you found something really important on and whatever. Right. It was pulling and organizing all kinds of stuff. So this was one of the times where I realized I hadn't come up with Launch First at the time. We made a huge investment in this. We ended up not being able to turn that into revenue because we were building the wrong product for the wrong market. There was a market for this product, several different markets, but I got really focused on what I believed the market should be. So I've made all the mistakes I talk about with founders, I've made myself. So the things that I coach founders on don't come from hubris. They come from my own hard knocks and things I've learned from my own products and my own customers.
Yeah, I see that on Launch First as well, right? I think that's your new-ish program here. Could you explain a bit more why it's different than what the other software agencies offer?
Yeah. So this is the classic. What you're looking at here is your classic approach to launching a software company, right? You start out with the concept, design, you do some development, you get your MVP. Along the way, hopefully you're raising money, maybe from friends and family, maybe from angels, and then usually most people, well, yeah, don't scroll down yet. I'm still on that. I want to kind of because this is really important, I think. Then you end up doing several different versions of beta. And then finally, right about here, you hit this wall because you now try to market the product only to find out nobody wants to buy it, right? I call this a viability barrier where you have to be able to sell enough product at a high enough price at a high enough closing ratio that you can reach a ratio of revenue versus or the cost of acquisition versus what's the lifetime value of a customer. And if you don't get to 3-to-1, then you don't have a viable business. And then you fail. And this is what happens with founders. And then they panic pivot for the next couple of years and then end up failing. So Launch First takes a very different approach. We say, don't wait until you get to MVP and 2 or 3 versions of beta later before you start selling it. Sell it before you even build it. We create a high fidelity profile, a prototype, which is a design prototype that looks and feels like a real product, but is not a product. There's no database behind it. There's no actual functionality. But when you're demoing it, people think it's a real product. And then you come up with a really high value sales offer to your prospective clients, and you go through a very involved niche analysis process so you know who you're marketing to. And if you can sell enough product at a high enough value at this point, which you can if you've nailed the problem statement down properly, then you prove that you've got product market fit. And if you don't, you can pivot quickly and cheaply several times. So in the space of 3 or 4 months, you may have pivoted several times. And if you can't find any path to revenue and you're not even close, then you can say, okay, this idea is the wrong time for the wrong market. I can say I failed fast and cheap, or I can just take a faith leap and go ahead and build it anyway, which I never recommend. But very often you do find a path to revenue, maybe not even with the original product that you thought, but by going through the sales process, you're finding a path where people do want a product. It's just not necessarily the one you thought that they wanted. And then you prototype that, and now you've got something they will pay for. And then you start to generate revenue, which also helps you fund the development. And you've got a growing list of beta customers who are invested because they paid for the product.
Got it. Interesting approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if software agencies would run more that way, I think they would get more clients and more clients coming back, right? Because it's so expensive to develop an MVP, and most of the time people just churn after that. David, thanks for coming on the pod. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, thank you. They can find me at tekyz.com, which is spelled TEKYZ.com. Or they can find me at launchfirst.com, which will navigate you to that landing page you just saw. And Launch First is spelled launch, the number 1st.com.
So that was David and Charles for another Founder Wisdom.